Alright everybody, today I'm going to show you how to fix a Honda pressure washer. This one's almost brand new too. Won't start. So when I get something like this into my shop, it's only a year old and the owner says it won't start now this year. First thing I suspect would be a fuel delivery problem, especially because of the widespread use of ethanol fuel. It causes some pretty severe deterioration and corrosion inside the carburetor if left in there too long. So we're going to go ahead and zero in on the fuel system on this. Alright, to check out the condition of the fuel system, the first thing I'm going to do is shut the fuel valve off, and up and down like that is what tells you that it's off. I'm going to go ahead and drain this gas real quick just to see what I get out of there. So I poured out as much gas as I could. I don't see too much sediment or any moisture in here, but I'm going to go ahead and stick some rags down in the tank and completely dry out the fuel tank, and then blow some compressed air in there to get out any sediment if there is any left. Poke some paper towels down there in there to dry things out. That's about the end of it, it looks like. Dry things out and blow out any sediment that's left down in the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take a peek inside the carburetor because that's most likely where the problem lies. So it's okay to tip it up like this. There's no gas in it. The fuel valve is off. Tip it up like this just so I can get to the carburetor a little bit easier. Let me change the angle here. That's your carburetor float bowl, and you need a 10mm wrench to take it off. But be careful when you take this float bowl off. You might be able to see what's in there just by what's in the bottom of the float bowl. Sometimes they get stuck on. Here's a trick. Couple quick little taps usually breaks it free. Now I don't see too much in there. There is some sediment down in there, not too much, but I would suspect that the main jet is probably plugged, so we'll check that next. Now you're going to want to make sure that you don't lose track of the gasket for the float bowl. You see the gasket actually came off with the float bowl in this case. I'm going to drain out any remaining gas in the fuel lines, just to make sure when I put things back together that there's nothing, no sediment in there. Turn the gas valve on, draining right out through the carburetor. And I'll go ahead and blow some compressed air down in through here and you see what happens. So I let the gas settle for about a half an hour and then poured it off. And you can see there actually was some sediment down in there. If you look real close, you can see there's quite a bit. Almost invisible unless you look real close. So this is what your float bowl and carburetor looks like from underneath. And that brass main jet right in the middle is usually what gets plugged. But I'm going to go ahead and poke something through it in hopes that if there is, that clears it up. You can also remove that. You can see it has slot marks in it if you need to. Well, you know, since we're here, let's go ahead and remove that. This is the screwdriver I'm going to use to get up there. It's pretty thin. Luckily, I was able to break it free pretty easily. Sometimes it won't drop all the way out. You gotta bang on it like that and it starts to come out. Should be able to reach it now. That's it. Let's look and see if this thing's plugged. So when you take out the main jet, there's also a nozzle that's up inside the carburetor. Sometimes it stays in place, sometimes it falls out. But if you look real close on there, you can see there's crud on there. So that's definitely what was preventing this carburetor from running. That stuff was plugging up the carburetor. You can definitely see a little bit of crud in there. Microscopic, about the size of a speck of salt, but that's probably what's preventing this engine from running. So I'll just use a piece of copper wire to stick down into every one of these little holes and make sure that they're not plugged. I noticed one of them was about halfway plugged, which is what you'll see a lot, just partially obstructed. And clean out the main jet as well as the nozzle. You want to make sure that every one of those tiny little holes in there has been cleaned out and that there's no residue on there anywhere. So the nozzle, the long part, is what goes in first. And then your main jet, which I will check one more time, is clear, and it is. Tighten it up, not too tight because it's a brass jet going into an aluminum carburetor body, so it's really easy to strip out. Make sure to hold in the hinge pin when you blow compressed air so it doesn't go flying. Alright, I think we're ready for the float bowl. Clean out the float bowl real good, and if the float bowl gasket has come off, it can be a bit tricky getting it back on, but just make sure you don't get it crossed up, and be careful and reinstall. That can be kind of tricky, as you can see. Patience and determination will pay off. I believe we're in place. I'm going to double check, make sure nothing's crossed up as far as that gasket goes. Yep, it's staying in place. Everything is where it should be. Let's go ahead and button this up. Remember, not too tight because you are dealing with a aluminum carburetor body, and just make sure that the float bowl is not cockeyed when you're tightening it back up. Just snug is good. Alright, we just need to make sure the fuel tank is nice and clean before we put fresh clean gas back in it and hook up a water source and test it out. Turn the fuel valve back on, and we're going to watch for leaks out of the carburetor or anywhere else, since we just reassembled everything. So it's important with the pressure washer, before you attempt to start it, that you have a water supply going to it and turned on. You also want to engage the wand to make sure that you have water flowing before you attempt to start it. Make sure the ignition switch is in the on position, or the kill switch. Make sure your choke is on. Alright, let's see what happens here.